In 2003, a SIM card in Nigeria cost as much as 25,000 naira. The minimum wage that same year was 5,500 naira a month. So before you could even make a phone call, you needed to spend more than 4 months of wages just to get on the network. Within a year of Mike Adenuga entering the market, those same SIM cards were free. To understand what Adenuga did, you need to understand what Nigeria's telecom market looked like before he touched it. Nigeria's state-run Nitel had been rotting for years, overpriced, unreliable, run into the ground by the same institutional failures that had hollowed out most of Nigeria's public infrastructure. By the time the government finally opened the sector in 2001, Nitel was already irrelevant. The licenses went to MTN from South Africa and Econet Wireless from Zimbabwe. Neither company came to serve Nigerians. They came because Nigeria was 120 million people with almost no mobile penetration, a market foreign operators could walk into with infrastructure, capital, and pricing built for somewhere else entirely and still dominate simply by showing up. The pricing reflected that. 50 naira per minute, and it did not matter if your call lasted 5 seconds, you were billed for 60 seconds. The technology to charge per second existed, they simply chose not to use it. You cannot accidentally build a billing system that always rounds up. By 2003, after 2 years of this, Nigeria had roughly 400,000 mobile subscribers in a country of over 120 million people. Mobile phones had become something you saw in other people's hands, the ones who could absorb losing 50 naira every time a call dropped after 4 seconds. That was the market Adenuga studied for 2 years before he moved. Most people describe Adenuga's entry into telecom as disruption. That word flattens what actually happened. He first received a conditional GSM license in 1999. It was revoked. He came back in 2002 when the government opened licensing for the second national operator, a unified license covering mobile, fixed line, and international gateway. 5 companies entered the process. When the financial stage arrived, 4 of them withdrew. Adenuga paid a $20 million deposit on August 13, 2002. The remaining $180 million followed on August 30th. Total, $200 million for a license to operate in a market that foreign companies had spent 2 years proving could extract serious money from ordinary Nigerians. He did not rush the launch. He spent another year watching, specifically watching where the incumbents were most exposed. The answer was obvious: price. Glo launched August 29, 2003. On day 1, the SIM card cost 200 naira, down from 25,000 naira. And every call was billed per second, not per minute. MTN and Econet had both publicly argued that per-second billing was commercially unworkable, that margins could not support it given infrastructure costs. They made this argument with the confidence of companies that had already built the networks and run the numbers. Within weeks of Glo's launch, both of them had switched to per-second billing. So the impossible became industry standard the moment someone proved it was possible. That tells you everything about the original pricing actually was. By the end of Glo's first year, the company had 1 million subscribers and had generated over 120 billion naira in revenue. 1 million Nigerians who had been priced off the network now had a phone. Here is the part of the story that changes how you read the rest of it. Adenuga did not invent the playbook he used in telecom. He had already run it in oil. In the late 1980s, Nigeria's oil sector was controlled entirely by foreign multinationals. When General Ibrahim Babangida decided to push for indigenous participation, Adenuga was one of 11 Nigerians given an oil prospecting license. His mother told him it was too risky. He invested over $100 million anyway, in exploration and drilling, in a sector that foreign companies had spent decades insisting that Nigerians lacked the technical capacity to operate independently. On December 24, 1991, Consolidated Oil struck in the shallow waters off Ondo State, first indigenous Nigerian company to produce oil in commercial quantities. The same argument that kept Nigerians out of oil, that the infrastructure, the expertise, the capital requirements made independent operation impossible, turned out to be wrong the moment someone with enough capital and enough patience decided to test it.
It was most unfortunate. I don't want to use this opportunity to revisit it, but it's part of the problems we have to face in nation building. You know, there's been one or two mistakes here and there. But if, because one or two mistakes have been made, if there are one or two problems, if people like me will shy away from those issues, the question is, who then is going to do the business in Nigeria? Somebody has to do the dirty job. But probably, Adenuga is supposed to be everybody's donkey. But listen, the issue here was that CIL, we went there and we told ourselves we are not going to leave the bidding room without a license. And we drove the price to 285. There was no question about that at all. And luckily for us, we found the money.
Political access got him the license. Capital went where others would not, and the incumbents who called it impossible watched it happen. He ran the same sequence in telecom 12 years later. The tools were identical. What changed was the industry. This is not a comfortable observation. The methods that built Adenuga's empire, government relationships converted into exclusive access, capital used to set pricing that smaller competitors cannot survive, infrastructure investments that function as permanent barriers, are the same methods that foreign interests used to control Nigerian markets for decades. He did not break the system. He learned it well enough to use it against the people who built it. Whether that reads as victory or as continuity depends on what you think the problem actually was. By the late 2000s, Adenuga had already won the pricing war. Glo held 25% of Nigeria's market, but he was watching where the next constraint was forming: data and the bandwidth that carried it. Every telecom operator in West Africa was renting international bandwidth from shared submarine cable systems owned by international consortiums. They were paying whatever the consortium charged. When costs went up, margins compressed across every operator equally. Nobody in the region owned the infrastructure. They all leased access to it. Adenuga decided to own it. Glo won. A 9,800-kilometer submarine fiber optic cable running from Bude in the United Kingdom down to Lagos with landing points in Portugal and Ghana along the way. The project cost somewhere between $800 million and $1.5 billion, depending on how you account for the full build. It became operational in 2009. It made Globacom the first single telecommunications company in the world to privately own a high-capacity submarine cable. Not the first in Africa, not the first in the developing world, the first anywhere.
Today, I really feel excited because today we are looking at a major step change in Nigeria. I promise you, things are never going to be the same again because now the Glo 1 submarine cable has arrived and linked in seamlessly with our 10,000 kilometers of fiber optic network. Now is the time when we can provide our country with clearer lines as well as high-quality internet bandwidth to any global destination at really affordable prices. I promise you, no one else can do this because no one else has a submarine cable to Europe and on to America connected to his own massive national network.
The effect was immediate. International bandwidth prices in West Africa dropped. Every operator benefited from the competitive pressure, but Globacom owned the infrastructure generating that pressure. Other companies were still tenants. Glo had become the landlord. In a region where the cost of data access still determines who participates in the digital economy and who doesn't, owning that cable was not a business decision, it was a structural move. The numbers from September 2025 tell a different story. MTN holds 52% of Nigeria's telecom market, 90 million subscribers. Airtel is at 33%. Globacom has 21 million subscribers and 12% market share. The company that once claimed 25% in its first year of operation is now a distant third. The reasons are not mysterious. A decade of underinvestment, corporate governance that analysts and executives inside the industry describe as weak, a culture that stopped asking the questions it built its early advantage on. In August 2023, Globacom suffered a major cyber attack that exposed customer data.
Globacom, one of Nigeria's biggest telecommunications companies, was hit by a cyber attack in July 2023. It gets even stranger. Following that cyber attack, for about 4 months, Globacom had no access to its emails, lost customer data, and several of the teams in the company were forced to communicate on WhatsApp.
The company did not disclose it for a year. In 2024, under pressure from the Nigerian Communications Commission, Globacom named its first external CEO since the 2003 launch, the first time since founding that someone outside Adenuga's family would run the company. What the decline reveals is the structural weakness baked into how the empire was built. Every major decision, the license bid, the pricing strategy, the Glo One investment, came from one man's judgment. That's a formidable capability when the man is paying attention. It's a liability the moment he isn't. Globacom was never really institutionalized, it was personalized. And when the person's attention spread across oil, real estate, banking, and multiple countries, the company drifted. The same concentration of control that made the early moves possible made the long-term structure fragile. That's not unique to Adenuga. It's the consistent failure mode of African business empires based on access rather than systems. Mike Adenuga is the 5th richest person in Africa, the founder of the first indigenous telecom operator in Nigeria's history, the man who laid a submarine cable that no individual company had ever laid before, and the man who proved twice, in oil and in telecom,